There's a place underground in Colombia that most people on Earth don't know exists. You get there by going into a mountain. Not around it, not over it, into it. You follow a tunnel that descends into the earth for several hundred meters. The air changes as you go down. Cooler, damper, carrying the faint mineral smell of the rock around you. And then the tunnel opens up, and you are standing in a cathedral. Not near a cathedral, not beside one, inside one, carved directly from the living rock of the mountain. 3 underground floors, soaring arched ceilings cut from solid stone, chapels opening off the main chamber in every direction. Everything you can see, every wall, every pillar, every arch, every surface is made from the same material: salt. The cross at the center of the deepest chamber is 8 meters tall. It was carved from a single block. It catches the light and seems to glow from within. 10,000 people can fit inside, and the people who built it had no architect, no master plan, no wealthy patron commissioning a masterpiece, no one looking at a blueprint and directing a workforce. They had pickaxes, they had faith, and they had decades of small decisions made in the dark. This is the story of the Salt Cathedral of Zipaquirá, and it is one of the most quietly extraordinary things human beings have ever made. The mountain of Zipaquirá sits in the Colombian Andes, about 50 kilometers north of Bogotá. Under it lies one of the largest deposits of rock salt in South America, the compressed remains of a prehistoric ocean that covered this region millions of years ago. The salt has been mined here for longer than written records exist. The indigenous Muisca people traded it before European contact. The Spanish colonizers recognized its value immediately. By the early 20th century, the mines were a significant industrial operation. Hundreds of men descended into the mountain each day to extract salt that would be sold across the country. The work was brutal. The tunnels were narrow and low-ceilinged. The air was thick with salt dust that settled in the lungs and on the skin and never quite came out. The lighting was poor. Oil lamps and, later, bare electric bulbs that cast harsh shadows and left large areas in near total darkness. You descended in the morning, knowing the mountain would be around you all day, knowing that the ceiling above you was hundreds of feet of solid rock, knowing that the occasional sound of settling stone was something you had to learn not to think about too carefully. And then you came back up in the evening, if everything went well. Not everyone came back up. Mining accidents were a fact of life in those tunnels. Falls, equipment failures, the unpredictable behavior of rock under pressure. The miners did what people have always done when their lives are genuinely and daily dangerous. They turned to faith. It starts with one cross, somewhere in the tunnels, at some point in the early 20th century. The exact date is not recorded because this was not the kind of thing anyone thought to record. A miner picks up a tool during a break and carves a cross into the salt wall of the tunnel where he is working. It takes maybe an hour. It is simple, rough. The kind of thing a person makes not because they are an artist, but because they need something to look at in the dark. Something that reminds them they are not alone down here. Other miners add to it. A figure, some additional carving. Someone installs a small shelf where a candle can stand. And then, someone notices something. The salt in these walls is not just white. It is, depending on the mineral content, white and gray and amber and almost black. It has layers and textures and variations that catch the light in different ways. When you carve it and polish it and light it from the side, it does something unusual. It glows. Not literally, not supernaturally, but the crystal structure of rock salt scatters and reflects light in a way that makes carved surfaces seem to be lit from within, rather than from outside. The miners, who spend their days surrounded by this material, begin to see it differently. Over decades, the small shrine grows. First, into a room large enough for a few people to pray in together before a shift. Then, into several connected rooms. Then, into something with the scale and the shape of a chapel. No architect directs this. No plan is drawn. Each expansion is a collective decision made organically by people who are trying to create more space for the thing that has started to matter to them. By the 1950s, what began as a cross carved into a wall has become an underground space large enough to hold hundreds of worshippers. The Catholic Church, recognizing what the miners have built, consecrates it as an official place of worship in 1954. And the work continues, because the miners are not finished. Over the following decades, the cathedral expands into the form it takes today. 3 underground floors. A descent that takes you deeper and deeper into the mountain as you move from the entrance through the nave toward the main altar. 23 chapels, each carved into side passages off the main route, each representing a different station of the cross, each one an individual artistic statement, carved over time by different hands. The main chamber, vast, silent, lit by carefully positioned lights that play off the salt crystal surfaces in the way the miners discovered decades earlier, holds the 8-meter cross at its center. The cross is not painted. It is not decorated. It is simply salt, carved from the mountain and shaped. The lighting does the rest. People who have stood in Notre Dame and St. Peter's and Sagrada Familia describe the Salt Cathedral differently. Those places were built by the powerful, they say, by popes and kings and great patrons, by the most celebrated architects of their times, with unlimited resources and centuries of accumulated craft. The Salt Cathedral was built by miners, working in the dark, carving something beautiful not because someone commissioned it, but because the darkness demanded it. Because when you spend your days in a mountain that might kill you, you need something in there that is more than just rock and salt and labor. You need something that says, "We were here. We made this. We brought light into the dark, and it mattered." The Salt Cathedral of Zipaquirá draws hundreds of thousands of visitors every year from every country on Earth. It has been called one of the wonders of the modern world. It has been named the most outstanding work of Colombian architecture. None of that was the plan. The plan was a cross on a wall during a break in a shift. And then the next small thing. And then the next. For decades. I think about this story when the things worth doing feel too large and too distant to start. Because the Salt Cathedral didn't begin as a cathedral. It began as one person, in the dark, needing something to look at that wasn't just rock. The cathedral was the accumulation of small decisions, small additions, small acts of making something rather than nothing, by people who had no idea when they started what they were building. Hit like if this one moved you. Subscribe. 3 days. See you then.